have with us Honorable Minister for Finance and Corporate Affairs, Shri Anurag Singh Thakur, and Comptroller and Auditor General of India, Shri Girish Chandra Murmu. A very good evening to one and all present here today, physically and online, and welcome to the 4th Annual Day celebration of the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India. On behalf of the IBBI family, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed guests for this evening for their presence at this memorable occasion. Honorable Minister of State for Finance and Corporate Affairs, Shri Anurag Singh Thakur, Comptroller and Auditor General of India, Shri Girish Chandra Murmu, Chairperson, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India, Dr. M.S. Sahu, members of the Governing Board of IBBI, and senior management and officers of the CAG office. I would like to extend a warm welcome to all our stakeholders spread throughout the country who could not be present here today due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but are joining us live, including senior officials from the Ministry of Corporate Affairs and other ministries and departments, chairpersons and members of regulatory bodies, members and experts of IBBI's advisory committees, technical committees and working groups, officers of insolvency professional agencies, information utilities, insolvency professional entities and registered valuer organizations, insolvency professionals and registered valuers, the esteemed contributors to IBBI's Annual Day publication, which will be released today, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed an honor to have you all today with us. In these trying times, on behalf of the IBBI, I would like to start wishing you and your families our best for your health and safety in these difficult times. We would also like to express our profound gratitude to all those doctors, nurses, and workers who are serving selflessly on the front lines of this health crisis. Mahatma Gandhi had once said, "Freedom is not worth having if it does not include the freedom to make mistakes." This quote of the Mahatma resonates with the economic freedoms that India strived to endow its economy with: the freedom of entry, freedom to compete, and lastly and more importantly, the freedom to exit. This is the ultimate freedom, the freedom to start anew from the ashes of honest business failures, the freedom to transform hopeless end to endless hope. This is the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016, which is a journey to celebrate failure. While the journey was on with the right earnest, the humanity came across one of its darkest periods in living memory. The world is facing an unprecedented test, and this is the moment of truth. Societies are in turmoil and economies are in a nosedive. This is a call to respond decisively, innovatively, and together to suppress the spread of the coronavirus and address the socio-economic devastation that it is causing in all regions. Exceptional times have called for exceptional measures. This required creating lifelines for households and businesses, from cash transfers to credit guarantees and adjustments to loan terms. Governments globally have taken measures to protect both lives and livelihoods. Insolvency laws have come in handy for all governments at these times. The Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India is a key pillar of the ecosystem responsible for the implementation of the code. Today, as we commemorate the 4th year of its establishment, we can look back into the history with pride and venture into the future with the same zeal and commitment. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, may I call upon Dr. M.S. Sahu, Chairperson IBBI, to deliver the welcome address.
Honorable Union Minister of State for Finance and Corporate Affairs, Sri Anurag Singh Thakur, respected Comptroller and Auditor General of India, Sri Girish Chandra Murmu, Deputy CAGs and Additional CAGs, and other officers from the Office of CAG, my dear colleagues from the Governing Board of the IBBI, members of the advisory committees and working groups of IBBI, MDs of IPAs and Information Utility, members of NC, LAT and LT, fellow regulators, senior officers from government, my dear insolvency professionals, registered valuers, and other stakeholders of insolvency processes, students of the graduate insolvency program, friends from media, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the IBBI, I extend a warm welcome to all of you to this 4th birthday celebration. I am extremely grateful to Honorable Minister and Venerable CAG for gracing the occasion and making the birthday memorable. Life does not cease to surprise us when we think we have reached where we set out to be, achieved what we wanted to, and have charted our future course of action in detail. There comes a surprise in our perfect world that requires us to adapt ourselves and recast our path. This, in essence, is the way I can sum up the journey of the IBBI and my association with the IBBI and the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. 4 years on, and I continue to be surprised and find that time has taken ahead of us each time we have tried to win the race. This has happened umpteen times. A surprise sprang up when the very first resolution plan was approved under the code, where unscrupulous people took over a company while creditors took huge haircut. Another surprise sprang up when the real estate companies were admitted into insolvency proceedings. These companies run mostly with the money of the home buyers, but home buyers did not have an explicit role in insolvency proceedings. I was surprised when a successful resolution applicant refused to implement a resolution plan. Such surprises were unique to Indian market and had to be addressed urgently, were addressed in the first instance by regulations and subsequently by the changes in statute. There are surprises like COVID-19, which crippled almost every firm, every business, every economy, and caught all of us off guard. The insolvency law had to rise to the occasion to save companies from being liquidated. What distinguishes an organization from an institution is credibility or brand equity. Credibility is not granted by the statute. This does not flow from any authority. This is earned by hard work over years and decades of consistent performance. IBBI has been taking baby steps in this regard. The kind of engagement IBBI has with stakeholders, including sittings with stakeholders in hundreds of roundtables every year. Placing the regulated in the shoes of the regulator, it has an outstanding arrangement a standing arrangement that enables anyone to suggest any regulation or amendment of regulation throughout the year. It has a statutory regulation to govern the process of regulation making. It has an organizational structure which houses the quasi-legislative, executive, and quasi-judicial wings at arm's length distance to avoid intra-institutional bargaining. These and many other features are unique to IBBI and set IBBI apart from others. If I can give you one to the way how people feel about IBBI, one Miss Seri Madera, head of policy and trade of the City of London, after visiting IBBI concluded that IBBI is a startup. This in fact sums up IBBI's incessant efforts to improve itself. Another person, one Ms. Chande DeLong, Senior Counsel of IMF, in an international conference of insolvency regulators last year observed that the quality and coverage of data IBBI releases are one of the best in the world and compares well with the century-old jurisdictions like USA. The IBBI office is a modern workplace with fully information technology enabled office. The office was fully functional even during the nationwide lockdown. It has the best quality of human resources who laid the solid ground and also the rules of the game in no time for implementation of a modern insolvency regime. It was fortunate to provide a cradle for two brand new professions in the country, namely the insolvency professionals and registered valuers. In fact, IBBI is so resourceful today, it's because of this biggest resource being a strong contingent of 6,000 insolvency professionals and registered valuers. It has, of course, access to the resources of insolvency professional agencies, registered valuer organizations, and information utility who are, in fact, an extended arm of the IBBI. The insolvency ecosystem has many novel elements which do not exist anywhere in the world. This includes IBBI itself. Most insolvency jurisdictions have two layers in the hierarchy of insolvency regulation, namely the government and membership organizations. The UK, for example, has insolvency service in the Department of Business, which is comparable to MCA in India. There are recognized professional bodies recognized by the Secretary of the State for authorizing and regulating insolvency practitioners in UK, which is comparable to IPAs in India. The code has inserted IBBI in between MCA and IPAs, and since there is no precedent to learn from, IBBI is striving to find its feet in the fledgling insolvency space. It is unique even as compared to regulators in India. Every other regulator in the country writes the regulations and enforces them. IBBI writes the regulations, but it does not enforce most of them. This at times creates tension in the ecosystem as role clarity is yet to emerge fully. Another institution, information utility, has no parallel in the world. It is an electronic repository of authentic financial information required for insolvency proceeding. There is a two-year full-time graduate insolvency program to be an insolvency professional. This has also no parallel. Two-tier regulation of professionals, requirement to be a fit and proper person to be a professional are novel even in Indian context. After the code was enacted, insolvency journey commenced with the establishment of the IBBI. IBBI started journey with one person, a chairperson from one small cabin in the Institute of Cost Accountants of India. But insolvency reforms quickly attracted very quickly the best employees to IBBI, the best professionals to insolvency and valuation professions, and capable, empowered market participants loved undertaking sophisticated insolvency transactions. We received cooperation from all around, and since I'm talking here, I can mention that the insolvency regime has been also a beneficiary of the CADR Indian Audit and Accounts Service. The first full-time member of the IBBI was an IA&S officer, Ms. Suman Saxena. The first member of the Insolvency Appellate Authority is an IA&S officer, Mr. Balvinder Singh. And yet another IA&S officer, Mr. S. Raman, is the founding managing director of the Information Utility National E-Governance Services Limited. When I look at the statistics and the journey of the IBBI and my personal journey with IBBI, I am reminded of a famous couplet by Majru Sultanpuri. मैं एकला ही चला था जानी ये मंजिल मगर लोग साथ आते गए और कारवां बनता गया. I am personally indebted to all those who joined the journey of IBBI and IBC's ecosystem and ensured that it was up and running in shortest time, unprecedented in the history of any economic legislation in the country and that of any insolvency regime around the world. It would not have been possible without each of you giving your best. This 4th birthday of IBBI gives me another opportunity to express my gratitude to all of you and to reiterate that IBBI needs your continuous support, guidance, and blessings in the days ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for mapping the journey of IBBI, its features that make it unique and set it apart, and the achievements that it has achieved in the last 4 years. To commemorate its establishment, the IBBI has instituted an annual day lecture series. We are privileged to have with us the Comptroller and Auditor General of India, Shri Girish Chandra Murmu, to deliver this year's annual lecture. Shri Murmu has had an illustrious career as a civil servant, hailing from the Gujarat cadre of the Indian Administrative Service. From Mayurbhanj, his place of birth, to the Crown of India as the first Lieutenant Governor of the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir, he is touted to be a troubleshooter with absolute command over legal strategies. Shri Murmu served in various capacities in Government of India, such as Secretary of the Department of Expenditure and Special Secretary in the Department of Revenue. Prior to his stint at the centre, Shri Murmu has served on important assignments in the state government of Gujarat, including Principal Secretary to the then Chief Minister of Gujarat. He has wide experience in administrative, economic, and infrastructure fields. We extend a hearty welcome to you, sir, and take the privilege and honor to request you to deliver the 4th annual day lecture on the topic, IBC, adaptability is the key to sustaining reforms in times of a pandemic.
Honorable Union Minister of State for Finance and Corporate Affairs, Chairperson of IBBI, the member of the board, Deputy CAGs, additional Deputy CAGs, senior officers from the CAG office, senior officers from the Corporate Affairs Ministry, insolvency professionals and others, those who are listening through the webcast. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank Chairperson IBBI for inviting me on this occasion and to share my thoughts on the progress made in the implementation of one of the most important economic legislations of recent times, namely the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016, and its adaptability to the present times in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic. These are unprecedented times when the whole humanity is reeling under impact of coronavirus pandemic. It has affected almost every country in the world and every human being on the planet, directly or indirectly. It is not the first time that humanity has seen such health crisis. There have been several notable epidemics and pandemics in the first centuries, wherein each of the brought about immense sufferings and economic and social upheavals. What is different this time is that the coronavirus pandemic is truly global, and its trajectory and impact are highly uncertain. It has not only caused immense human sufferings, but also a new, almost dystopian reality is emerging, where lives are being dictated by a virus for which humans are yet to find a remedy. Governments across the world have stepped into action, implementing mitigating measures, while assessing the situation both in their countries and elsewhere around the world. India has very successfully contained initial spike in COVID-19 cases. With strict implementation of lockdown, this time was also effectively utilized to upgrade the health infrastructure and for augmentation of supplies, etc. It is heartening to mention that India has successfully contained the death rate due to the coronavirus proportional mortality, that is, death arising from COVID-19 as percentage of all death in India is probably the least. However, the intensity of the pandemic has caused disruptions in the global economy of proportions dimension almost comparable to the Great Depression of 1929 and subprime crisis of 2008. According to the IMF's World Economic Outlook of June 2020, as a result of the pandemic, the global economy is projected to contract sharply by 4.9% in 2020, experiencing the worst recession since the Great Depression and far worse, the global financial crisis. Cumulative loss to global GDP over 2021 is estimated at around $9 trillion. While the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, that UNCTAD, estimates that the pandemic will likely cost the global economy between $1 trillion to $2 trillion. As the virus spreads, the economic impact of the crisis will test the resilience of our economic and financial structures. There are divergent views among the economists, experts and policymakers on the pace of economic recovery going forward. While some predict V-shaped recovery in the economy and some others are not so optimistic, we may need to wait and watch how various measures taken by the government to ensure economic recovery pan out in the near future. Coming back to the topic, that is insolvency resolution regime, We can take pride that the Indian Parliament has taken a historic step by enacting the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code as a stepping stone to kindle reform in the economic interest of the country. It is a response to the receptivity of the legal apparatus to the changing need of the times. As you are aware, where a firm remains under stress for long, its balance sheets get stretched. Such failure may many firms, particularly large ones, impact the balance sheet of creditors, particularly the banks. This reduces the availability of funds with creditors, limiting their ability to lend for even genuinely viable projects, thus restricting the credit growth. The impact is pronounced where some firms deliberately fail to repay loans. Thus, what emerged in India, popularly referred to as the twin balance sheet problem, was a situation where both the banks and firms were reeling under stress of bad loans, thereby hindering overall economic growth. In the absence of exit mechanism, either from the firm or the entrepreneur, even when it is in deep stress, the Indian economy suffered the inefficiencies of several zombie entities in the system for so long. Given the resources are scarce and failure are routine in dynamic market economy, India needed a codified and structured market mechanism to put the underutilized resources to more efficient use continuously and free entrepreneurs from failure. The insolvency reforms through the code provided a market mechanism for rescuing a failing but viable firm, liquidating an unviable one and releasing its resources, including entrepreneurs, for competing users, and thereby provides freedom to exit. The ultimate freedom, it provides a market mechanism for time-bound resolution for insolvency wherever possible and ease of exit where required. Honorable Prime Minister of India beautifully underscored the role of code in provision of freedom of exit. He stated that the code has prepared a route of exit for honest entrepreneurs whose business ventures have failed and in doing so saved their future. The code effectively consolidated multiple legislations spread across different fora into one comprehensive one-stop shop for insolvency resolution. The Supreme Court also upheld the very constitutionality of the code in the renowned Swiss Ribbon Private Limited and another versus Union of India and others judgment. All in all, the code has blended well with the country's legal and commercial systems. The code strives to maximize the value of the corporate debtors' assets. It does so by ensuring that all efforts are made to facilitate continued operation of the corporate debtor as a going concern during corporate insolvency resolution process. To this effect, it ensures a calm period for the firm when nobody disturbs the firm undergoing resolution. It prohibits suspension or termination of supply of critical and essential services to the corporate debtor to keep it going. It mandates continuation of licenses, permit and grants, stays execution of individual claims, enables raising interim finances for running the company, insulates the resolution applicants from the misdeeds of the company under the erstwhile management, etc. It provides for market mechanism where the world at large competes to give the best value for the firm through a resolution plan. It enables clawback of value lost on account of avoidance transactions like preferential, undervalued, fraudulent, extortionate transactions. This deters the management from indulging in such a transaction and enables cleansing of corporate governance and improves the confidence of the stakeholders. The code has created a cohesive, comprehensive ecosystem that cements the process and services provided together towards the achievement of its objective. With the enactment of the code, India has witnessed the birth of insolvency profession and valuation profession that have professionalized insolvency services. The code has opened unlimited possibilities of resolution, including merger, amalgamation, restructuring, and any kind, which often requires professional help. This has created market for services of insolvency professionals, insolvency professional agencies, registered valuers organizations, insolvency professional entities, and information utilities, and expanded the scope of service of advocates, accountants, and other professionals. There are presently around 3,100 insolvency professionals, 3 IPS, 20 IPS, 3,100 registered valuers, and 14 RVOs. The code has also created market for education and capacity building of these professionals. It is heartening to note that debtors and creditors alike are utilizing the provision of this code. Till June 2020, about 3,900 corporates, including some of the very large NPAs, have been admitted into CIRP. About 1,205 CIRPs have completed the process, either yielding resolution plan or ending up with orders for liquidation. 380 processes have been closed on appeal or review or settled, and 218 have been withdrawn. Another 692 firms have commenced voluntary liquidation. Rich jurisprudence has developed. The government has even proactively addressing the issues that come up in the implementation of the reform. Swift implementation of the code got reflected ease of doing business. The World Bank Ease of Doing Business report has recognized India's effort at making resolving insolvency easier. India's ranking in the resolving insolvency improved from 136th in the DBR from 2072 to 52nd position in the report released in October 2019. One of the most remarkable achievements of the code has been the significant behavioral change that it has effectuated or nudged among the debtors and creditors alike. This behavioral shift has resulted in substantial recoveries from creditors outside the code and improved the performance of firm. It's further motivating them to make the best effort to avoid default. Further, it encourages the debtors to settle default with their creditors at the earliest, preferably outside the code. With the code in place, no repayment of loan is no more an option, and ownership of the firm is no more a divine right, and equity is no more the only route to own a firm. The code has had impact on the credit market. Through provision of resolution and liquidation, the code reduces incidents of default and enables creditors to recover their dues through revival of the firm or sale of liquidation of assets. It incentivizes creditors, secured and unsecured, bank and non-bank, financial and operational, foreign and domestic, to extend credit at a lower cost for projects and thereby enhances availability of the credit. The code is also helping in resolve the NPA problem of banking system. The importance of insolvency regime cannot be stressed enough now more than ever as the whole world battles the COVID pandemic. I am of the view that this pandemic has adversely affected both the real and artificial persons of our society and economy. In the form of health emergency, it has affected the health of real people, and in the form of economic crisis, it has affected the life of artificial persons, corporate entities. In today's dynamic market economy, the lives of both have come to become intertwined and interlinked. The health of a corporate entity has direct bearing on the lives and livelihood of the people it employs and its suppliers. The collective health of the company is an industry, and ensuring collective health of industries across the board have a bearing on the health of the economy. Varied elements of market economy like credit market, entrepreneurial spirit, competition, innovation, etc. are adversely affected when the economy deteriorates. A report by the Asian Development Bank and International Labour Organization highlights that employment prospects of the young in Asia and Pacific have been severely challenged due to the pandemic. It adds, stating that the youth between the age of 15 to 24 years will be hit harder than adults above 25 and older. In this immediate crisis, thus provision of adequate unemployment insurance and social protection remains necessary. As such, the year 2020 is proving to be an extremely challenging year worldwide. Business worldwide are struggling to exist, and their functioning has been temporarily terminated. Developing economies need support to finance critical spending, making all countries safer. Advanced planning is needed as the global financial safety net could be further tested. As you are aware, Government of India took lead in very early to contain the spread of COVID-19. The need to take appropriate steps to safeguard the business was timely realized, and the Government of India took multiple steps to cope up with the worst pandemic in recent human history. Honorable Prime Minister announced comprehensive packages under PM Garib Kalyan and Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, which comprise individual relief and packages for economic revival considering various sectors of the economy. In the arena of insolvency resolution, in keeping with the situation, certain steps were taken to provide relief for corporate insolvency resolution process also. Under the code, the threshold limit of default by corporate debtor for initiating an insolvency process under the code was fixed at rupees 1 lakh only. However, in view of the COVID-19 outbreak and its consequential economic impact, the above threshold has been increased to rupees 1 crore. This has actually, prevented, lot of cluttering kind of package in the insolvency boards and or in the NCLTs kind of thing. Otherwise, anybody at the, for 1 lakh insolvency, you can also knock the door of the insolvency. Now, this has given a lot of relief to this. The said amendment has been made through notification. This has proved to be a relief measures to protect the interest of MSME debtors particularly from being pushed into insolvency due to pandemic-induced financial stress, as the earlier threshold limit for triggering insolvency could have been easily met in the present situation. Thereafter, the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code Amendment Ordinance 2020 was promulgated on 5th June to suspend Section 7, 9 and 10 of the IBC to bar initiation of insolvency proceeding for any default arising on after 25th March 2020 for a period of 6 months, extendable up to 1 year. These measures have been taken to avert rapid increase of insolvency of companies due to the pandemic and to make sure the companies can survive as a going concern during the crisis. Here I will quote Charles Darwin, who said, "It is not the strongest or the most intelligent who will survive, but those who can best manage the change." It is in the spirit of managing change that such measures such as suspending certain provision of the code have taken. These recent amendments in the code are not a setback for insolvency reforms. It is only a temporary measures taken to keep economically viable companies from being dragged into insolvency due to force majeure condition. As the government prepares the insolvency landscape of the country for post-COVID-19 phase, in the longer term, one is hopeful that the measures taken in the short and the medium term will be successful in preserving the life of companies and livelihood of persons in distress. Rescuing lives of firms being the prime objective of the code, it must not be used to take away their lives prematurely. Going forward, once the pandemic is behind us, a few issues that would need to be handled through the IBC would be making provisions for the resolving group insolvencies and cross-border insolvencies, implementing various provisions relating to individual insolvency and bankruptcy under code is also an agenda to examine based on emerging economic situation. Further strengthening the judicial infrastructure to deal with the insolvency and bankruptcy matters in the country would also need to be given a priority. The IBC has till now evolved and attuned to every emerging market requirement. I am sure it will continue to do so and remain pertinent for the times to come. I conclude with this thing that in the changing circumstances, every institutions everywhere been adapting to the need of the change, and the IBC has managed the change so far, and I hope that in coming days also, looking to our economic situation and the overall global scenario, they will manage it further. I wish them all the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your thoughts on the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. its many achievements, its misses, the path ahead, and challenges posed by the pandemic. As you rightly said, the insolvency reforms need to adapt and recast their path as times change, especially now as the world battles the COVID-19 pandemic. On the occasion of our annual day, we would like to take this opportunity to release the IBBI Annual Day publication titled Insolvency and Bankruptcy Regime in India, a Narrative. This annual publication of IBBI, second in the series, is a contribution towards presenting the thoughts and viewpoints of various stakeholders in the insolvency ecosystem in terms of its passage so far and outlook for the future. The theme of this year's publication is a narration of the path the law has taken, where it stands today, and what lies ahead. Piecing together a selection of articles from practitioners, policymakers, lawyers, subject experts, and academicians that elucidate and stimulate thought around this theme. The publication is an attempt to contribute to the scholarly and policy discourse. May I request the Honorable Minister of State for Finance and Corporate Affairs, Shri Anurag Thakur, to kindly do the honors and release the publication. Sir, kindly unveil the publication with the red ribbon. Ladies and gentlemen, may we please have a round of applause. It is the endeavor of the IBBI to build capacity of insolvency professionals, given that the insolvency regime is new and the law needs to be understood and interpreted correctly to deliver the envisaged outcomes. In pursuance of the cooperation agreement with IBBI, International Finance Corporation, World Bank Group, has prepared a handbook for insolvency professionals titled Understanding the IBC, Key Jurisprudence and Practical Considerations. The handbook captures the evolving discipline of insolvency with all its nuances and is intended to serve as a single point of reference for insolvency professionals and all others in the ecosystem who wish to delve into this emerging area of law and practice. We have a small video from Mr. Mahesh Uttamchandani, Global Manager, Finance, Competitiveness and Innovation, the World Bank Group, speaking about the handbook.
Greetings from Washington, D.C. on behalf of the World Bank Group. Thank you to the IBBI and to Dr. Sahu and Mr. Kumar for this effort and for the invitation to share this message with you. As we've seen over the last few months, the liquidity and solvency challenges triggered by the COVID-19 pandemic are expected to give rise to a wave of bankruptcy filings across the globe. The lockdown and social distancing measures that are urgently needed to contain the pandemic have disrupted business activity and their ability of businesses to pay creditors. Optimal insolvency regimes are accordingly critical to facilitate the rescue of viable businesses and the efficient liquidation and market exit of non-viable businesses. On the other hand, weak insolvency regimes can push viable enterprises into non-viability through lengthy and overly complex restructuring procedures, or lead to the proliferation of zombie firms that leach productive resources from the market. The World Bank is the Joint Financial Stability Board designated standard setter in the field of insolvency and creditor rights, alongside the United Nations Commission on International Trade Law. In this context, the World Bank Group has developed principles for effective insolvency and creditor-debtor regimes, or the ICR principles, to assist countries with evaluating and strengthening their insolvency regimes in line with global best practices. One of the core components of the ICR principles is promoting effective institutions, including courts, insolvency regulators, and insolvency representatives. Strong institutions and professional actors promote transparency and predictability, which are key to a robust lending system and foster confidence among market participants. Investors need to assess their recovery risks, including how security interests, enforcement rights, and collective proceedings will be upheld through local laws. Against this backdrop, the IFC Advisory Program has been providing technical support to the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India, or IBBI, which is one of the cornerstones of the Indian insolvency regime. Since its enactment in 2016, The Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, or IBC, has greatly strengthened the ability of stakeholders to maximize recovery through India's insolvency regime. IBBI has played a leadership role, amongst its other responsibilities, in disseminating best practice and knowledge-building tools to improve understanding of the IBC and how it operates in practice. This handbook provides one such tool to assist insolvency professionals and all other stakeholders in the insolvency ecosystem who wish to strengthen their understanding of the IBC and related practice. It aims at providing education on the IBC as well as practical skills and an understanding of implementation. We would like to express our sincere thanks to all the staff of the IBBI who have partnered with us in this important initiative and have guided us in its development, particularly, as I mentioned before, Dr. Sahu and Mr. Kumar. We would also like to thank the many insolvency professionals, academics, and other technical experts both inside of India and outside who have been involved in this endeavor and who have provided their time and expertise so generously. In particular, Ms. Pooja Mahajan of Chandiok and Mahajan and Mr. Neil Taylor of NTI. Both have worked tirelessly on the technical content alongside our own team that included myself, Rolf Berndt, Mr. Sagar Shankar, and Ms. Antonia Menezes. We hope that this handbook is useful and assists in strengthening the implementation practices of the IBC, and we wish you well in your discussions and deliberations today. Thank you.
May I now request the Comptroller and Auditor General of India to kindly unveil the handbook, wrapped in blue. IBBI, in collaboration with mygov.in, conducted a national online quiz on Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016 from 1st to 31st July 2020 to promote awareness and understanding of the code among various stakeholders across the country. The quiz received an overwhelming response with close to 1.26 lakh participants. There were in fact participants from every state and every union territory of India. We take this opportunity to award the top 3 best performers of the quiz. The gold medal for best performer with a cash prize of rupees 1 lakh goes to Mr. Aritra Saha. Unfortunately, due to the ongoing pandemic, Mr. Saha is unable to travel and join us today. The silver medal for second best performer is awarded to Mr. Pavan Khandelwal. May I request the Comptroller and Auditor General of India to kindly present the silver medal certificate and cash prize of rupees 50,000 to Mr. Khandelwal. The bronze medal for third best performer with cash prize of rupees 25,000 goes to Ms. Vakati Venkata G. Nanusha. Ms. Vakati has also not been able to join us due to the current circumstances. Nevertheless, ladies and gentlemen, may we please have a round of applause for all the winners. Insolvency resolution has opened up markets for distressed assets in terms of resolution plans, interim finance, and liquidation assets. Price discovery in any market is efficient if it has many participants and there is complete transparency. In the interest of efficient price discovery, IBBI has empaneled NESL, the information utility registered with it, to provide an electronic platform for market for distressed assets. May I request Honorable Minister to kindly inaugurate the platform. So you may kindly click on the mouse placed on your table. Thank you, sir. It is with immense pleasure that I introduce our chief guest for the evening, Honorable Minister of State for Finance and Corporate Affairs, Shri Anurag Singh Thakur. His distinguished work in numerous capacities and as fountainhead of illuminating ideas speak for themselves. A young and zealous personality, he is a source of inspiration to many as a political leader, a policy maker, a distinguished cricketer, and a regular commissioned officer in the Territorial Army. He has been the president of BCCI, the Board of Control for Cricket in India. He has been at the forefront of the battlefield as the country battled its way through the pandemic to emerge victorious at the end of the tunnel. His immense contribution towards making the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code a success is commendable. Ladies and gentlemen, please join us in welcoming our chief guest, Shri Anurag Singh Thakur.
Comptroller and Auditor General of India, Shri Girish Chandra Murmu ji, Chairperson Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India, Shri M.S. Sahu ji, whole-time members of Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India, Deputy Comptroller General, ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening to all of you. First and foremost, I want to congratulate everyone associated with the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India for having completed 4 years, 4 challenging and successful years. My heartfelt congratulations to all of you. Every milestones give us an opportunity to take a pause and look back at where we have begun, and then look ahead at the multiple challenges and opportunities lying in front of us. Last year, when I delivered the address for the 3rd annual day of IBBI, little did we know how things would change due to the COVID-19 pandemic. It has been more than 6 months since our nation has been affected. Not only nation but the entire world has been affected due to COVID-19 pandemic, and unfortunately no one knows when it is going to end. It is a situation with declining demand, decreasing availability of external finance, declining investments, causing firms around the world to face insolvencies and bankruptcies. Every crisis needs a timely and adequate response, and that is possible only under a strong, able and a decisive leader. When the COVID-19 pandemic hit India, Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji addresses to the nation were befitting of a leader of his stature, and his calm and composed demeanor reassured the people across the country. At the same time, the PM addresses and his leadership skills showed that our citizens remained united. Domestically, with all our resource constraints and population pressure, our phased response in scaling up our policies without causing unnecessary panic has ensured that the people have largely rallied behind government efforts. India has responded quickly and implemented a judicious mix of fiscal and monetary policies to mitigate the negative impact of COVID-19 on the economy. On May 12, 2020, Government announced the Atmanirbhar Bharat package, a special economic and comprehensive package of 20 lakh crore rupees, equivalent to 10% of India's GDP, with an aim to encourage businesses, attract investments, and strengthen the resolve of Make in India. The Insolvency Bankruptcy Code has undergone prompt course corrections to address deficiencies arising from implementation of the code in sync with the emerging market realities to further its objectives. Since its enactment in 2016, the code has been amended 5 times in 3 years, within a short span of time, mainly to streamline the processes and to address deficiencies arising from implementation of the code, in sync with the market realities, to further its objectives, demonstrating that the government is leaving no stone unturned to ensure the successful implementation of this reform. The fifth and the latest amendment, passed in the monsoon session of the Parliament, had to be done to prevent viable companies from being pushed into the insolvency proceedings for their failure to service debt obligations on account of pandemic-induced stress. The government recognizes that it may be difficult to find adequate number of resolution applicants to rescue a corporate debtor during this period of crisis. It suspended fresh applications for insolvency proceeding in respect of COVID period defaults, which was 6 months commencing on 25th March 2020. When the market got a deep and a sudden shock, it was difficult to think ahead amid uncertainty. Last week, we issued a fresh notification extending the suspension of the code by another 3 months. This will give the companies breathing time to recover from the financial stress and will also avoid job losses which would have happened otherwise. The code has been hailed as one of the most important economic legislations in recent times, having reformed the much needed exit mechanism for corporates to start with and having addressed an important aspect of ease of doing business in the country. The government is committed to keep up the achievements of the code and to not to undo the strides made in making resolving insolvency easier, especially now when businesses are under tremendous financial stress. The insolvency regime now boasts of probably the single largest body of case laws. The Insolvency Law Committee, which is a standing committee, continuously reviews the implementation of the code to identify issues impacting the processes under the code and make recommendations to address them. We have seen a behavioral change. We have seen the better recovery and better debtor-creditor relationship after the IBC. Now we have taken some other steps during the pandemic to provide relief to our industry and to the common man. Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan package, under which around 42 crore people have received financial assistance to the tune of 68,822 crore as on September 2020. Under the Emergency Credit Link Guarantee Scheme, till date, 1,77,353 crore has been sanctioned and 1,25,422 crore has been disbursed to 25,74,000 MSME units. Out of these, 9,849 crores of loans to 2.8 lakh individuals have been sanctioned, of which rupees 2,617 crore has been disbursed. A survey conducted by National Institute of Bank Management regarding the ECLGS showed that the micro enterprises are the biggest beneficiaries of the ECLGS and funds have been used mostly for immediate liquidity support. This shows that we have given immediate support to the small and micro enterprises, due to which we avoided job losses at a large scale. Around rupees 9.57 lakh crore or 4.7% of the GDP have been injected since February 2020 to enhance the credit flow in the economy by the RBI. RBI has announced certain regulatory measures wherein, in respect of all term loans, including agriculture term loan, retail and crop loans, outstanding as on March 1st, 2020, all regulated lending institutions were permitted to grant a moratorium of 6 months on payment of all installments failing due between 1st March 2020 and August 2020. Listening to the demand of the industry and the stakeholders, RBI also released a circular on the resolution framework for COVID-19 related stress, wherein companies will be allowed to restructure their loans, thereby avoiding NPAs. Close to 30,000 crore rupees additional emergency working capital funding for farmers through NABARD is being provided. Close to 45,000 crore rupees partial credit guarantee scheme 2 for NBFCs are being provided, and we have extended the scheme for 3 more months till 19th November 2020, whilst also expanding the scope of the scheme. India's September factory activity grew at the fastest pace in over 8 years. If you look at since 2012, this is the fastest factory activity since 2012, and the manufacturing PMI for the month of September stands at 56.8, increasing from 52, which is a huge positive for the manufacturing economy. This is the highest reading in the last 8 years, as I said, and the 5th quickest surge in the survey listing. To put this into the perspective, China's September manufacturing PMI is 51.5, and this shows that India's revival is on the right path. We saw growth of 3.37% in the agriculture sector in the first quarter. We have seen our forex jumps, or the forex reserves jump up to a record high of $545 billion. We have gradually unlocked the entire economy, and the GST collections for the month of September 2020 are estimated to be significantly higher. If I have to give you the exact number, it is 95,480 crore in the month of September. If you look at the last year figure, in the last September, it was 91,916 crore. So this clearly shows that the recovery is fast, we are on the right track. Our FDI inflows have not reduced, and we have received inflows of $74 billion in 2019-20. The trend continues in this year despite the pandemic. Between April to July, India attracted almost $22 billion. Car sales grew at 17% in August 2020, which signifies continuing the recovery of demand in small towns and rural markets. In July, petroleum consumption recovered to almost 90% of the consumption seen in the same month last year. Tractor sales showed a month of sharp improvement, which is 39% in July, signaling a strong demand from the rural economy. If I have to talk about the UPI, which is a very successful product, Bhim UPI. Bhim UPI has touched a new high in September 2020, with the number of transactions reaching 1.7 billion mark as of September 29th, and the value of transactions crossing 3 trillion mark. It clearly shows that how India is progressing. We passed the historic bills in the recent session, which was rightly been called as the 1991 movement for the agriculture sector in India. Under the Farmers Produce Trade and Commerce Act 2020, farmers will be freed from the grip of the middlemen, and they will be able to sell their produce to the buyers from across the country at a price they deem to be fair and at a time of their own choosing. जैसा प्रधानमंत्री जी कहते हैं कि अब किसान केवल मंडी तक सीमित नहीं रहेगा, उसके पास और भी विकल्प होंगे। वो देश के किसी भी व्यक्ति को किसी भी समय पर किसी भी कीमत पर अब अपना सामान और फसल बेच सकता है। ये बहुत बड़ी उपलब्धि है। व्यापारियों के पास तो होती थी, इंडस्ट्री के पास होती थी, किसान के पास नहीं थी। किसान को भी अवसर मिला है, तो अब के मॉनसून सेशन में इस बिल को पास करने के बाद मिला है। मीनवाइल, अंडर द फार्मर्स एम्पावरमेंट एंड प्रोडक्शन एग्रीमेंट ऑन प्राइस एश्योरेंस and the Farm Services Act 2020, farmers can opt for contract farming with agriculture trade firms, wholesalers, big retailers and exporters. The provision of market linkages at the sowing stage itself will insulate them from production and price vagaries. The government is not going to leave the agriculture production entirely open to the private sector. Through these acts, we are enabling the farmers to produce as per their will and convenience, and they should not be bound by selling only to the APMCs. The farmer should have the control over his crop, and he should have the right to decide the price of the crop. These acts will be catalyst to the promise we made to the nation of doubling farmers' income by 2022. I say this with confidence that Modi government means business in a world where it is no longer business as usual. Our government has taken a slew of measures to strengthen the corporate governance framework. In 5 years of Modi government, India's ranking in the ease of doing business jumped from 142nd place in 2014 to 63rd position in 2019. India earned a place among the world's top 10 improvers for the third consecutive year. India, along with the other top improvers, implemented a total of 59 regulatory reforms in the year 2018-19, accounting for 1/5 of all the reforms recorded worldwide. To further enable of ease of doing business and to improve the regulatory environment, we have announced steps to decriminalize the company's law defaults. We have been shifting compoundable offences to an in-house adjudication mechanism. The Union Cabinet has cleared 72 amendments to the Companies Act 2013, decriminalizing various offences. There has been a withdrawal of more than 14,000 prosecutions under the Companies Act 2013. These have been long pending demands of the industry, and this shows that in 2013, I think the Companies Act was brought in a hurry. That is why it needed so many amendments. The IBBI is a unique regulator as it regulates both the service providers and the transactions. Having said that, the manner in which the board has helped in setting up the historic IBC and regulated it indeed is praiseworthy. IBBI has lived up to the expectations of the government by being a dynamic and proactive regulator. To regulate a law as nascent and vital as the IBC is by no means an easy task. IBBI has been working towards building confidence in India's insolvency and bankruptcy law through delivering timely, fair, and efficient and effective risk-based regulation. It has been at the forefront of engaging effectively with the stakeholders before making any important regulatory change and is maintaining transparency in decision making and information dissemination. It has an online mechanism to crowdsource ideas. I am confident that under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi and Honorable Finance Minister, our economy will be revived and we will have a sustained growth and equitable development. Last year, I remembered Shri Arun Jaitley ji for being the visionary pioneer of this landmark legislation which has altered the debtor-creditor relationship in this country. I once again pay my regards to him for having successfully enacted the code. The journey of the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code and the IBBI has been quite successful in the past 4 years, and I have no doubt that the road ahead might be tough, but it will be successful. I thank everyone of you present here for your efforts towards our nation's development, and I hope that we all adopt and work harder to come out of this pandemic relatively unscathed and chart an economic recovery towards the top, taking all sections of the society along. Thank you once again for inviting me, and I would like to thank Shri Girish Chandra Murmu ji also for sparing his valuable time and addressing all of you. Thank you once again. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Thank you, sir, for enumerating the efforts of the government to tide over the present crisis. Like you said, the government has left no stone unturned. India responded quickly to mitigate the negative impact of the pandemic through the Atmanirbhar package, and the achievements of this package are clearly visible on the ground with increasing FDIs, petroleum consumption, automobile sales, UPI transactions, and so on. Ladies and gentlemen, earlier at the time of unveiling of the platform on distressed assets, we could not play the video due to some technical glitches. We regret the same. May I now request Dr. Mukulita Vijayvargya, whole-time member IBBI, to propose the vote of thanks.
Honorable Minister of State for Finance and Corporate Affairs, Learned CAG Shri Girish Chandra Murmu ji, Chairperson of IBBI and the members of the Governing Board of IBBI, Senior Officers, Deputy CAG, Senior Officers of CAG, Senior Officers of the IBBI, ladies and gentlemen. I consider it a great privilege to propose a vote of thanks to all the dignitaries who have graced the occasion on the establishment of the IBBI, on the 4th annual day of the establishment of the IBBI. It is a great memorable evening despite restrictions due to COVID-19 situation, which has changed the ways and means of governance, priorities of business, work culture of offices, lifestyle of individuals, and delivery of educational services. कोरोना ने पूरी राह बदल दी है, पूरे विश्व की राह बदल दी है. It has laid down a landscape for a change in the ease of doing business to ease of living. It has given a platform for the government as well as individuals for new innovations, new ideas, and radical changes for the adaptability in the new circumstances. I think for Atmanirbhar Bharat, I think Corona maybe it's an adversity, but we can find opportunity in this adverse situation, and we have a new and clean slate for even implementing reforms through Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. I thank our chief guest for the occasion, Honorable Minister for State of Finance and Corporate Affairs, Shri Anurag Singh ji, for taking out time, valuable time from his busy schedule and gracing this occasion and sharing his thoughts and inspiring us on the insolvency reforms, and also for highlighting the achievements of the Modi government and for the Atmanirbhar Bharat and the packages announced by the government. On behalf of the IBBI, our special thanks to our learned CAG, Shri Girish Chandra Murmu ji, for delivering annual day lecture on a very special topic. We also thank the CAG office for permitting us to organize the event in their office premises and extending all the support to make it a successful event. I also thank CAG office for giving us facility to organize this 4th annual day. I thank all the members of the governing board of IBBI for joining this event. My special thanks to all the officers of the CAG for their presence today. Thanks to CAG officers for their cooperation in organizing this event. Thanks to all the stakeholders who have witnessed this event online, senior officials from the Ministry of Corporate Affairs and other ministries, chairperson and members of the regulatory bodies, members and experts of IBS advisory committees, technical committees and working groups. Thanks to the Office of the Insolvency Professional Agencies, Information Utilities, Insolvency Professional Entities and Registered Valuers Organization, Insolvency Professionals and Registered Valuers, the esteemed contributor to IBS Annual Day publication, and I thank friends from media also. Ladies and gentlemen, once again I want to say that we the IBA family are almost grateful to you all. We thank you for giving us this evening. It has been a great pleasure. On this occasion, I would like to just quote from Gita, chapter 15, Shlok 5. Nirman moha jitsanga dosha, adhyatma nitya vinimritta kama, dande mukta sukduk sanje, gacchante muda padam vyam tat. I think this is the occasion after Corona, I think COVID-19, सभी का मोह खत्म हो गया है और हम सब का मोह इसी में है कि how we are safe, how we are healthy. Thank you everyone.
With this, ladies and gentlemen, our evening comes to an end. We at IBBI extend our heartfelt gratitude to all the distinguished invitees for sparing your valuable time and gracing us with your presence, and to all our stakeholders who witnessed the program online. May I now request you to please rise for the national anthem.
जन गण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता, पंजाब सिंधु गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल गंगा, विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उत्कल जलधि तरंगा, तब शुभ नामे जागे, तब शुभ आशीष मांगे, गाहे तब जय गाथा, जन गण मंगल दायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता।